Oh, are you coaching? Okay, cool, because we ain't really discussed that yet. So, Dub Nation, we finally got to see Chris Paul really as a part of the team and around the teams with Steph in Vegas, the practice facility. You saw the jerseys getting printed. And it appears like Chris Paul thinks he's going to start. Now, let's first talk about why that may be. Obviously, Hall of Fame career. He's never come off the bench in his entire career, right? I've heard the theory of, well, if the Warriors were to get another ring, Paul wants to be sure that he gets the credit for being the head of the snake and being a starter on that, right? And then you could also make the argument at his age, hey, he needs to warm up and then play. You don't want to do your warm up, your stretching, and then sit on the bench for 6 minutes. All, I guess, somewhat logical reasoning, right? And so if he were to start, I think the first thing you say is, all right, well, you can't ask any of the big three to come off the bench. That's just ridiculous. 4 championships together. One of their rivals comes to the team, and now one of them's got to come off the bench. So you can just forget about that, right? And I think the obvious answer would be, okay, we'll just ask Kevon Looney to come off the bench. Hell, he's the egoless superstar role player, and he's done it plenty of times before, and so that's fine. But then you're trotting out what probably the smallest starting lineup in NBA history, at least in the modern era, right? So it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And then you think, all right, well, what about Wiggins? You know, Wiggins is a humble, quiet guy, doesn't really want the spotlight, locked into a contract. Could you bring him off the bench and kind of sell him on, well, we need you to lead the second unit. We need you to score more and do that. But now you would be asking Klay Thompson at this stage in his career to essentially guard the best scorer starting games, right? Because that's Wiggins's role. First impressions are important. There's no two ways around it. What's the first thing someone notices about you? In most cases, it's your face, and more importantly, your skin. So it's time to put your best face forward. How do you do that? By adding a skincare routine. And you know what? It's not hard. You just don't have the right tools until now. Clinically proven to reduce wrinkles, fine lines, and signs of aging, Caldera Lab is the leader in men's skincare and is here to save the day. Use our exclusive code ALCHEMY at calderalab.com to enjoy 20% off their best products. Caldera Lab makes high-performance skin products for men, and it starts with the regimen. It's a twice-a-day routine. You start with the clean slate, a cleanser, and then you add your base layer, the moisturizer, and then at night, the secret sauce serum. Now, I'll be 40 here in November, and fortunately, I don't have too many wrinkles, but what I do have is discoloration and really oily skin. And products in the past, usually the cleanser over-dries my skin, and the moisturizer makes my skin too oily and greasy again. It's really hard to find a balance. Caldera Lab, I think, has nailed that with the regimen. And so if you want to give it a try, head over to calderalab.com, get 20% off using the code ALCHEMY. Again, head to calderalab.com, use our code ALCHEMY and get 20% off. Jump into your skin and impression royalty with Caldera Lab. And so it really just doesn't make any sense, right? And so I think the bottom line is, if the Warriors cater to Chris Paul's ego by starting him and changing this up, we've got a problem. We've got a problem. And that's not to say that they couldn't compete. It's just a bigger picture issue of egos and trying to work this thing out. Listen, Chris Paul is at a stage in his career where he has to humble himself. He couldn't win his way, so now try to win our way, right? And the other issue is like load management, dude. And I get it. Chris Paul, part of what makes him great and has made him great is his little man syndrome, that feisty, little guy syndrome that he's not given an inch, right? And I get that's how he's gotten to where he's gotten. But it's also in these last few years in Phoenix, he hasn't load managed, right? To me, that's ego. It's like, listen, dude, you come up gimpy every playoffs, load manage, and you look 30 minutes, 30 plus 30 minutes. And I think that's a mistake. And so now is the time for Chris Paul to humble himself and buy in to this championship organization. It is not a time for the Warriors to bend to Chris Paul. Maybe part of getting Chris Paul to buy in to coming off the bench and leading the second unit is it's not who starts, it's who finishes. You hear coaches say that all the time, right? But the problem is, man, you look around the West, you look around the rest of the league and how teams are constructed right now. I'm not sure how many nights you can close with a micro lineup of Steph and Chris Paul in the backcourt. Never mind, and we'll talk about Dario Saric here, that acquisition, and we know Draymond is fully capable of closing games at the 5. I'm not even talking about the front court. If you've got Steph and Chris Paul in the backcourt when it matters, late in games, it puts more stress on Steph defensively. And I guess maybe you could say, hey, okay, well, it takes less pressure off him offensively to run stuff. But now you're asking Steph to be bumped up to the next guy, right? And so I just don't know how you can close with that micro lineup either. And then I think the other issue is Klay Thompson being in a true contract year. So I know right now the conversation is who starts. As the season begins, I think it's going to quickly become who's finishing. That being said, I really think it's 50-50 Chris Paul even ever plays for the Warriors. From my understanding, the trade was official on July 6th. So August 6th, he can be traded. And, I'm guilty of it. I think we're all guilty of it. When the trade happened, it's like, okay, let's convince ourselves of how this could work potentially, right? But in the back of our minds, understanding the reality of it is the trade was made to get the toxicity out of the locker room, right or wrong, as well as get off that contract. And understanding that Chris Paul is as much a money move and an asset move as much as a fit. And they're going to say the right things because at the end of the day, these guys are humans. They're players. You're not going to say, oh, we don't really want Chris Paul. We just wanted to dump that money. I know he doesn't fit, but, we'll figure some shit out, right? That's not what they're going to say. They're going to sell us on the fit and how it's going to work. But much like the D'Lo situation when KD left, right? We all knew like, hey, man, he's probably going to get flipped again. And so the two names that make the most sense is one, Jeremy Grant in Portland, right? Just signed a new big extension. And now with the Dame drama, kind of doesn't match their timeline, right? And so could that be a flip? And then the other name that it sounds like is Toronto finally ready to move on from Pascal Siakam. And so, we can talk about start and finishing, how Chris Paul's going to fit. I wouldn't be surprised at all, again, if he doesn't even play for the Warriors. Let me know in the comments if you have any other trade ideas as far as flipping Chris Paul before the season even starts, or if you think this is a fit, right? And you think this is a thing. But, I think we all saw the kind of, I don't want to use the word hostility, but there was a little bit of an attitude with Chris Paul, which is not surprising, right? But I thought he would just buy in and understand, I'm going to come off I'm at this phase in my career. There's no shame in it. He's already a legend. Humble. You want to win, you got to buy in. And I think now everybody's kind of raised their brow with those comments, but hey, we'll see. Maybe he will. But the other news is they land Dario Saric. And that was, I think, a big relief for Dub Nation and probably Mike Dunleavy Jr. himself, right? Finally got a stretch big body, and it's just a puzzle piece that fits with every other front court player. That's the key. Not only is he a system fit and understanding how we want to play, moving the ball quickly, rebounding, passing, shooting, right? But he can fit with every other front court player on this roster, and so that increases his value. And so we've been talking about it for a month, right? That was one of the guys that everybody circled. And so I think that that's a big deal. So like everyone else, I was at Vegas Summer League over the weekend, and it was crazy trying to get around. Vegas was just a mess, man. But I still enjoyed myself, got to the fights. Shout out to Dub Nation and those that showed me love. Very humbling. Let's start with Guy Santos, because I think that was my biggest takeaway from seeing these guys up close was Guy Santos is a much better shooter than I realized. And I think that the numbers even say as he matures here. And it's one of those things where when you get up close and you can see him shooting free throws, warming up, or just shooting threes, it's a super soft release. It's effortless. And even when he misses, it comes off the rim soft. He's always seamed up. He doesn't get sped up on the release. And I think that kind of changes the equation with him, because you always hear, right? The one thing you always hear with young players is, oh, I've added 15 pounds of muscle in the offseason, right? Like that's like the standard thing that all these guys say. He added 15 pounds of muscle. It's very functional. He has a bully ball game downhill with very good, I know he's from Brazil, but you kind of say that European, that foreign footwork, where he comes to a jump stop, pivots, then takes the step. It feels like American players don't realize that's legal, right? That step through move. You see the WNBA girls use it, but not the men. And so you can see how naturally physically he is. But as that shot, I just didn't know that shot looked that good. Honestly, it looked better than Quinones' shot, if you want to be honest. And that, again, changes the equation for him, because if you have to come out to him on that shot, his footwork is so good downhill. He's so big with that awkward, quick feet. And you can tell he went to the Barbosa school. He's Leandro's protege. And he has that move where when he catches the ball, he immediately heads one way on the catch, and then on the first step crosses you over. And again, at that size, it's startling. It's kind of why he looks like he's about to tip over, but he stays on balance. He's got good touch. And, I think that as of right now, I guess the word is the Warriors are going to hold that roster spot open for potential buyouts, which is, fine. You want to remain dynamic. But outside of that, it seemed like Lester Quinones was the favorite if he was going to get a roster spot, right? I'm not so sure it shouldn't be Guy Santos. And I know that they have long-term plans for him, and you can get him on a two-way, maybe both of them on a two-way. And so that wouldn't be an issue. But Guy Santos was the guy that impressed me most. And I think that he has a lot of mismatch potential, I should say, as a power forward. He's a power forward to me, a stretch four and an offensive mismatch. Now, the defense has a ways to go. But what I like about it is his effort level. It's not a guy where you're like, dude, he doesn't want to compete on the defensive end. He's naturally super physical. The effort is there, but his play recognition and awareness isn't. He's just a step late on rotations or understanding, like coming up in a pick and roll, that he's going to switch it. And so he finds himself in just bad closeouts and in awkward positions because he's not recognizing where to be in time. And that's an experience thing, right? You can change that. The effort thing is much harder to change, in my opinion. And so I'm just really encouraged with him as a prospect. And, maybe it's a silly thought, but I wouldn't be mad at him at all on this roster. It just adds. That's the thing is Quinones, listen, Lester was fine as well. He's a knockdown shooter when he's open, right? And defensively, you can tell he was getting up on the ball and he navigates screens pretty well, offensive rebounds. He's a more polished player, a more defined NBA skill set. But what he also is another guard, and we're so guard heavy right now. Santos and that size and mismatchability, it's an intriguing piece that if I were the Warriors, I wouldn't rule out having him on the big roster. Now, I have other takes here. I'm going to jump into what I call, it's usually on Patreon, my VIP bonus section. But YouTube is encouraging me to start this membership program and give me these bonuses and stuff. So I'm going to do it. And the rest of this video on my Summer League takes will be either Patreon VIP or the new membership button here. I haven't even set it up yet, but I'm going to do it. And so I'll continue on to my other takes from Summer League. But eventually, everyone will get them, right? I got to trickle out the content here. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Chris Paul situation, man. Like, get with it or get out, bro. We have no time for this ego shit. Like, humble yourself, buy in, understand that you all got to have the same goal here if you want to win. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.